All right, how we doing? Good? Thank you, Anthony, for reading. That was awesome. So we're starting a new series today called Would You Rather. You guys ever played this game? You guys ever played Would You Rather? If not, let's play. Why not? Let's play this game. So would you rather, let's just figure out what kind of people you are. Would you rather have tacos or burritos? Who's a taco person? All right. Who's a burrito person? Anybody in here burrito? Okay. All right. So pretty 50-50 there. All right. All right. We're gonna get a little bit more personal. How about that? All right. Would you rather eat food off the top of the trash can or off of the ground? All right. Ground. Who's a ground person? Who's the off the top of the trash can person? Guys, come on, man. It's just it's right there on top. Come on. If you have seen my floors at my house, you would not eat off them. I promise you. Right? You get dog hair in your mouth. I mean, it's not good. All right, so I don't, but you can still get dog hair in your mouth. It's a thing, right? I have friends who have dogs. They sometimes bring their dogs to my house. All right. So, would you rather? All right. Would you rather ride on a train with someone who sang the whole time, or ride on a train with a baby crying the whole time? Who's taking the singing? What if the song is "You Can't Touch This"? You still taking singing the whole time? All right. Yeah. One time, Mallory and I, this wasn't a train, but we were with our first child. We flew. She was about 6 months old. We flew from. Where did we fly from? We flew from North Carolina. Flew from here. She was born here. We've lived in so many places. So she flew. We flew from North Carolina to New Hampshire, and we were in New Hampshire for a couple days. And on the flight there, she was great. And on the flight back, everyone hated us because she just cried for 3 hours straight from Baltimore back to Greensboro. So anyway, it was crazy. It was not fun. You definitely want the person who's singing "You Can't Touch This" all day long. I promise. So anyway, well, we're in this series. The reason why we called it "Would You Rather" is because Jesus is going to go through chapter 7 and even the end of chapter 6. Why we lumped the end of chapter 6 with this is because it's kind of this. There's this aspect of where he begins to kind of lay out these different types of personality traits, and essentially we have to ask ourselves, well, would we rather be this kind of person or the kind of person of the kingdom? Would we rather be this? Would we rather be the person that Jesus is talking about here, or would we rather be the person that Jesus calls us to be and wants us to be? And so that's why we called it this, and so I thought it would be fun to just kind of start that way. Hopefully you guys got a good laugh out of it. But he begins. All right, we're gonna end chapter 6, and so the cool thing about today is that you guys get 2 sermons in 1 week. Isn't that great? Who's excited? We get to try and cover this much scripture in hopefully less than 45 minutes, if I'm lucky. And so we'll see. But here we go. So he starts with this idea of worry. And really the question is on this is would you rather worry or trust God? Would you rather be someone who is stuck in worry or someone who is trusting God? Now this word that we get for trust in the scriptures is the same word that we translate faith and belief, and so you see it translated in that way a lot. But probably the best terminology for faith and belief is actually this word trust. It actually gives kind of a more encompassing idea of what faith is and what belief is that it's actually putting your trust in something. And so that's really what faith and belief are when we're talking about it in the context of the scripture. And so what we realize is that when Jesus begins to talk here is that worry begins to reveal, when we worry, it begins to reveal a lack of faith. As people who claim to believe and have faith in God, what worry does is it begins to show a lack of faith. Now, Jesus, he begins by talking about worry in the context of what comes right before it, which is talking about treasure on earth or in heaven. And so it's in that context of like money and possessions and things and stuff, and then he goes into clothing and food, and his question, which is really interesting, but I think if we're honest, there's a good reason for it. His question is, if God sees the birds of the air and the lilies of the field, and he gives them what they need, and adorns them with the splendor that he adorns them with, how much more valuable are you than they? Like, you are God's prized possession. I was telling somebody this past week that, like, I think the Reformation did some things to us. That, like, the Reformation is a great thing because it put the center back on the gospel instead of, like, trying to earn your salvation, which I think is a beautiful thing, and we need to, like, be grateful for that. But it also, like, completely devalued a lot of, like, you as a human being being made in the image of God and being his masterpiece. Because a lot of times what we do is we think of ourselves as just sinners saved by grace. And yeah, you are a sinner saved by grace. That's a part of you, but that's not all that you are. You are also God's prized possession. And if you're God's prized possession, why would he, as your Father, not give you the things that you need? Right? James, who's Jesus' brother, says every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of the heavenly light. Meaning that the God who put the stars in the sky sees you and he gives you good gifts. Because you matter to him. And the idea that we would worry about certain things in our life instead of trusting God to just be God and love us like he wants to love us, is hard for him to understand. See, last Sunday, I had a really funny encounter with my daughter. So I have 4 children, and my second daughter, Zoe, is just a ball of fun. Like, she is just, if you come over to our house, somebody asked her the other day, I think maybe it was Anthony, he was over at our house, and he said, what are you excited about being 7? Like, she just turned 7 years old, and she goes, I get to be more sassy. So that, in a nutshell, that's my daughter, okay? Like, holistically, that one answer tells you everything you need to know. That is her to a T. Now, here's the deal, okay? This is I'm sitting with my children. It's Sunday night. I have the kids on Sunday night. Mallory's away, so I have all 4 kids on Sunday night. And we're sitting upstairs in our playroom, and Zoe has, like, this splinter in her foot. But it's not like a wood splinter. It's like a fabric splinter. It's like a piece of plastic or a piece of metal or something like that got stuck in her foot, and it's just kind of sticking out. And it's painful. Like, it's striking some sort of nerve inside of her foot that, like, when you touch it a certain way, it hurts. And I'm like, honey, just let me see it. And she's like, no, like, she's freaking out. Like, I'm not going to let you see it. And I'm like, just let me look at it. I just want to see what we're dealing with here, right? Like, I'm not going to touch it. Just let me see what we're dealing with. It's so hard to see. It's like a little tiny thing. I'm looking really, really close. And I see it. I'm like, well, do you think I can try and take that out for you? No. Like, screaming, yelling. It is crazy. Well, then her brother bumps it. And she just loses her mind. I'm like, honey, let me help you. I can take that pain away. Let me take that pain away. If you just trust me, like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm your father. I do not want pain for you. I'm trying to help you. No. And so, like, I'm like, honey, please, just let me look at it. And so I grab her as soon as I touched her toe. I mean, I wasn't even, like, anywhere near the splinter. She, goes ballistic, like, to the point, like, I've never seen. Like me on a roller coaster ballistic. You know what I mean? Like, just crazy. Like, just lose her mind. And so I pick her up, and I'm just like, okay, it's time to go to bed. You need to rest. And so we take her to her room and lay her down. She's still crying, hardly can breathe because she's crying so hard, right? It's a really bad moment for her. And for me, as her father, but I mean, she's really in it. Like, she's just struggling. And I'm just like, okay, honey. Well, let's just rest, and then we'll talk about this more in the morning, you know? Just try to get to sleep. Don't touch it. Don't mess with it. Just go to sleep. She goes to sleep. Wakes up the next morning. She's sitting at our bar eating some oatmeal. I come out. I'm getting ready to head to work. I come out of the room, and I walk into the kitchen to get something to drink to take out the door. And she's sitting there, and she's looking at her foot. And I'm like, is it still there? Yeah, it's still there. It's like, what do you want me? Can I look at it? Yeah, you can look at it. Okay. All right. Do you think I can try and take it out for you now? I don't know. I don't want you to. Come on, honey. Like, I promise, I don't want to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. Like, just trust me. And so she's like, all right, yeah, sure. And then I go to reach for it. She kind of freaks out a little bit, right? But I'm like, honey, just grab the chair as hard as you can grab the chair and grit your teeth as tight as you can grit your teeth. I promise this won't take long, and you probably won't even feel it. She goes, okay. And she's sitting there all tensed up. And I reach in there, and I grab it, and I pull it out. And she's sitting there all tensed up, and I walk away. And she's like, you done? I'm like, yeah, honey, I got it out. Oh, really? I didn't even feel that. Yeah, I know. I tried to tell you that 100 times last night and tonight. Like, we could have been done with this 24 hours ago if you would have just listened to me and you just would have trusted your Father. You get what I'm saying? And we are so much like that sometimes. We are so much like this little 7-year-old girl who has a splinter in her foot, and we're afraid that taking it out is going to be the end of the world. And he's saying, look, I love you. I am your Father. Can you just trust me? You're worried about so much you don't have to be worried about right now. Like, I'm going to take care of you. It is not my hope, it is not my desire to harm you, but to do good for you. And so when we worry about certain things in our life, especially small things, they may seem big to us. They are small to God. Your biggest thing is really small to this amazing God we serve. And we need to grab a hold of that with hope, and we need to put our trust in that God. That even our small, our biggest things are small for Him. And yet He treats them as if they're big deals, and He'll take care of them. It's such a beautiful thing about who God is. I love what James says in James chapter 4. If you have a Bible, flip over there, but the words will be on the screen. James chapter 4, verse 13, he says, now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this city and spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why do you not say, or why you do not even know what will happen tomorrow? What is your life? But you are a mist that appears for a little while and vanishes. Instead, you ought say, if the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. And as it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. Anyone then knows the good that they ought to do and doesn't do it, it's sin for them. And what James does, he's brother Jesus, he's speaking here, and what James is a lot of is kind of a commentary almost on the Sermon on the Mount. If you go and you read through the book, it's almost like tackling the same things that he's tackled, but kind of giving a commentary from James' perspective. And I think one of the things that James is doing here is he's helping us understand this principle of Jesus is like a lot of times we are so worried about the things that are coming way down the line. And if we could just let today, and Jesus says, if you just let today take care of itself, because tomorrow has enough worry of its own. And so this isn't a call not to be a person of worry. Can I just be honest? Like, maybe breathe a sigh of relief there. Because worry is about as normal as taking a breath. Like, we're going to experience worry, but it's worry that's associated much of with like the future. And how's the future going to unfold? And am I going to be okay? And is it going to be taken care of? And is this going to happen or is that? Like, it's so much, and instead of just staying focused in the right now, right? And there's this aspect of where I think what Jesus is trying to pull us to is he's trying to say, look, like just let today kind of play out. See, we oftentimes we feel like, man, if we're not happy with where our life is, right? Which if I'm honest, like that's a lot of people in our world. A lot of people in our world, if you were to just take a poll of where they sit right now, most of them would be like, yeah, I kind of don't want to be here 5 years from now. I hope I'm somewhere else. I hope I've gone beyond or done this or done that. But then they start to worry about how do I get there? If I don't do something now, like it's not going to change then. And it's like they get all bogged down into this space of where like I want my life to change, but like because I'm not happy with it. But like they wrestle with this idea of like trying to get there, and they feel like life begins to unravel a little bit. Life begins to unravel as they're going. And like if I stay here, like life is just going to unravel before me. And what I want to try and encourage you with, and I don't know if this is helpful or not, but it was helpful for me as I was studying this to think that, you know what, life, God is not in the business of letting our life unravel, but He is in the business of letting our life unfold. That there is like a system, like it's not like this ball of nothing that He's just going to open up and everything's just going to fall out. But it's more like a systematic unfolding that He kind of has something for us, and then when it's all laid out on the table, we get the kind of the end result. But a lot of times we feel like life is unraveling instead of just unfolding, and God's saying, just trust me that God, like life is unfolding, it's not unraveling. Can you trust me that right now your life isn't just going to unravel and it just be a mess on the ground? But if you just trust me, day after day it will unfold, and at the end you will have this thing that I've let unfold before you. It's beautiful and wonderful and meaningful. And then there's also this aspect of where Jesus talks about the kingdom here, and He says, "Seek first the kingdom." And so there's almost like this pull or this feeling that Jesus is trying to help us understand that we can worry about the kingdom today. That this is something that I think oftentimes we miss the opportunities that are in front of us to go after the kingdom today because we're worried about the future too much. As a pastor and as a leader of our church, I am trying to think 10 years in the future about where I think God is taking this church and what are the things we do right now to get us there and like all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of times in all of that thought, I miss a lot of right now opportunities. I miss a lot of right now opportunities to love on the people who are here right now, or to walk alongside of someone who's hurting in a certain situation that they're in right now. And like, so I know the tension of this. And it's not even that you're not trying to seek the kingdom, but it's that you're trying to seek the kingdom and you have an opportunity to live out and seek the kingdom today. Like you have something that you ought to do today, and yet you're too concerned about, well, what do I need to do 6 months from now? What do I need to do a year from now? What do I need to do 2 years from now? If we just stay focused on seeking the kingdom first every day, like He's gonna give it all to us, He says. Seek first the kingdom, and all of it will be given to you. That's a pretty good promise, right? And if it's the word of Jesus, can't we take Him at His word? That if today we will stop worrying so much about what's coming down the line, if we just seek first the kingdom today, that everything we need will be here. And everything He has for us will be here, and our life will just unfold, and it won't unravel. Right? So we can worry about the kingdom a little bit more than we do probably. And worry about living it out right now, today. Seeking it first above other things. All right? So this is my best attempt to now transition from sermon number 1 to sermon number 2. So here we go. Sermon number 2. All right? So the whole idea Jesus is trying to help us understand worry reveals this lack of faith. We need to trust God. Let life unravel. Trust that if we seek first His kingdom, it's going to be okay. All right? Here's the second thing that we're talking about, which comes in chapter 7. So we're getting into chapter 7 after 13 weeks. Praise God. Chapter 7 of Matthew starts with this idea of a judge, being a judge. He says, do not judge or you will be judged. The measure you use will be measured to you. And this is really an idea of would you rather be someone who is a judge or offers judgment? Would you rather be judgmental or would you rather be self-aware? Oftentimes, our lack of self-awareness leads us into this place of being judgmental. Where if we had more self-awareness, we could be more full of grace, more full of mercy, more full of kindness. Because we see the mercy and the grace and the kindness that we have been given. Does that make sense? When we don't have the self-awareness to see the grace in which we actually have been given, it oftentimes allows us to look at other people in a judgmental place. And let me be honest with you on what this word judge is. This word judge is krino in the Greek, and it's used in a lot of different places throughout the Bible to offer lots of different thoughts, but essentially at its core it means to decide between two things. That's what it means. It means to decide between two things. And the idea that you also see, so you have this idea of it, decide between two things, and then you have it where it's used as a judge, which just means an expert in a field. So think about if you were to go try out for American Idol, you would stand before a panel of judges, right? They're an expert in the field. They can determine whether or not you can sing or not. And then think about then it's used as a judge, which is an expert in the law. So think about what we would consider a judge in a courtroom or something like that. Expert in the law. They've gone through law school. They understand the law. They understand how to rule on the law and those kinds of things. And then there's also this aspect of this word being used in the terminology of judgment, of being able to have good judgment and bad judgment, or impaired judgment and non-impaired judgment, whatever the case might be. So this word encompasses a lot of different ideas, right? Even in our own thought process and our own thinking. And the reality is that Jesus is not saying don't be a person who can look at two things and decide what's good and what's not. Right? He's not saying like don't just live life without an awareness of these kinds of things and these kinds of decisions. He's not saying don't take stock of what's happening and determine if this is good or if this is bad. That's good. That's a good source of judgment, right? And that is something that is holy and righteous and godly, and we should all engage in. We should all engage in this aspect of being a judge. We should judge for ourselves what is right and what is wrong based off of what we read in the Scriptures, what we feel the Holy Spirit leading us to, all of those kinds of things, right? So that is a part of judging or being a judge that we are all called to actually do. What he's talking about is more of turning yourself into an expert in a place where you're not really an expert. Right? Like that's really what he's getting at. Is that in their world and in their culture, you have to realize that they had the Pharisees and they had the Romans who were both kind of exercised this way of life. That they would make determinations about people lawfully and yet turn around and do like really egregious things. Or you'd have the very religious elite who would put people down like the Pharisees, and yet they wouldn't see their own hypocrisy in it. And so he draws this picture for us, and he says, look, may you please do not do this. Do not be like these other people in your world. Do not be like the person who sees a speck in someone's eye and yet has a telephone pole in your face. Like, please don't be that person. Because it's not remotely helpful. It's just judgmental. It's devoid of grace and love and humility. It's arrogant. It has no power to actually help someone make progress and change. And so he says, please don't be those types of people. Mallory and I, we got into an argument. I don't know how long ago. I don't even remember what the fight was about. We got into this argument, and we were arguing back and forth. And I'm pretty sure I was saying something like, "You need to stop this, and you need to stop that, and you need to stop doing this, and I think that was kind of the thrust of my message. And pretty soon she goes, "You have got to be kidding me. Can you please take the telephone out of your face for a second? Like the telephone pole, like, can you just take the plank out of your eye? Like, here you are trying to fix all my, like, can you just fix yourself first?" Anyone ever have an argument like that or feel like saying that to one of your significant other from time to time? So here's she was right. I had a huge blind spot. You know why I had a huge blind spot? Because I was blind. Because I had a telephone pole in my face. You can't see anything with a telephone pole in your face. There's no way in the world you can help someone take a speck out of their eye if you can't see. You just can't. And so not only is this like helpful in the sense of like just good advice in general, but it's very practical. How are you going to be able to point out other people's flaws and issues when you can't see clearly? When your vision is that impaired. And so here's something that I want you to understand: is that this is not about not sometimes you need other people. You need community. Sometimes you need other people to speak into your life in a specific way to be able to help you identify the fact that you have a huge plank in your face. And that's not judgment. That's not condemnation. There is a way that can be condemnation, but that's not judgment. It's not condemnation. If that person loves you and is going to love you whether you remove that or not. And that's about the only, it's about the most powerful way, at least, I won't say the only, but the most powerful way in which to deal with your own mess and become more self-aware is to let other people, give other people the permission to speak into your life. For some of you in your marriage, you need to give more permission to your spouse. Say, "Hey, when I have a plank in my eye, can you please let me know?" And for some of you, you need to have some community where that's possible. But that needs to be formed around a relationship. Because devoid of relationship, if you start pulling or going after taking specks out and taking planks out, devoid of relationship, that's just condemnation. Which Jesus never offered. Jesus did not offer condemnation. The Bible says that the gospel of the world, that He gave His only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall have eternal life, that Jesus did not come into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. Romans 5:8, that Jesus, that God demonstrates His love for us. While we were still sinners, Christ came and He died for us. While we were still sinners. So the offer that we get to help us take care of things that are messing us up is this loving grace and compassion. And if you have loving grace and compassion for someone, you can begin to help them. But I would first start by asking other people. This is where I would start. I would first start by asking other people to help you. And then once you have some people helping you get the telephone pole out of your face, then you can start helping other people. Because anything else just lacks a lot of self-awareness and likely leads to condemnation. Now, let me be clear of what this can really look like. So when I was go way back, right? Let's go back 17 years. When I was 17 years old, I was involved in some pretty bad stuff as a high school teenager. Like I was doing things I shouldn't be doing at church, going to church, but just kind of hanging out, not really following Jesus, if that makes sense. Just kind of hanging out because that's where I had some friends and that's where some pretty girls were and that kind of thing. That's where I was. And yet some of my friends at my church, or my youth minister, they knew some of the things that I was doing, And they loved me enough to like pull me aside and set me down and say, hey, like you need to probably like make a decision. You probably need to like make a judgment on, do you want to be this person or do you want to be this person? Like do you want to keep going down this road that you're going down, or do you want to really get serious about following Jesus? And that conversation made me go, well, I really want to get serious about following Jesus, and then led me to go to Bible college and start studying to be a pastor and all of those other kinds of things. Like essentially, like I had Christian community that came alongside of me and they said, look, Derek, like we see something that you need to fix, that you have something wrong. Like, can we help you take that out? But I also watched these people like take out some of the bad stuff in their life previously to that. And I watched these people like begin to walk with God in a way that I really admired before that. And I built this relationship with them where like when they spoke to me, it wasn't condemnation, and it wasn't, hey Derek, you're a wretched sinner, take that speck out of your eye because it's not good. It was hey, can we help you? And that essentially is what Jesus is saying. He's not saying that you can't see someone else's speck and help them remove it. He's just saying maybe you should first take care of what's in like an ailment to you, and then you can more effectively help those that need to be helped. He's not saying that you can't make determinations about people's trajectory of their life, and that's not a good thing. He's not saying that you can't determine whether or not someone is on a good road or a bad road. He's not saying that. He's just saying that if you're on a bad road, you better know it first. And you better get off that bad road so you can take someone down that better road. So, let me just say that, like, I think for us, in order to not be judgmental, in order to move in a direction of grace, like let us be self-aware. Let us ask other people, hey, is there something that I need to deal with so that I can help other people? Because I really want to help other people. And may we also not see this as a call to be passive when we do make a judgment that someone's life is headed in a wrong direction, and we have the ability to help them out of that. But may we do it with love and grace and compassion, because that's how Jesus deals with us. All right? So let me address this last aspect of this teaching, and then we'll wrap things up. He says, do not give to dogs what is sacred, and do not throw to pigs. If you do, they will trample over them, and they will tear you to pieces. Now, this is kind of a weird thing that Jesus says here, and so I'm going to do my best to give you what I think this is saying here. I've read different things, I've heard different things, and so let me just give you what I think would be out of those interpretations and out of my own feeling, what I think is going to be most helpful. Some people believe that what he's talking about, because he talks about pigs, Jewish people didn't eat pigs, and he used the terminology brothers in this kind of teaching on judgment, so he's talking about just Jewish people, and so he's saying, don't take this to the Gentiles, essentially, is what some people have said, is that like, this is not, this is for you, this is for the Jewish people, not for the Gentiles yet, blah, blah, blah. But I think more in line of what I think maybe Jesus is trying to get at here is that there are going to be people that you are going to see going down a bad road, or you're going to see that they have a plank in their eye, or that they have a speck in their eye, and you're going to want to help them. The only problem is they have no desire to follow Jesus. And so you're going to throw something very valuable at them, which is the gospel. And you're going to throw that at them, but all they're going to feel is condemnation. All they're going to feel is judgment. They aren't going to feel grace and mercy and love and kindness. And they're not going to receive that well. They're going to receive it as if a dog receives something that is sacred or a pig that receives pearls instead of pig slop. They don't know its value. And so to them, it's not important, and they are going to reject it. And more so, they're going to turn on you. And so we have to be careful not to just throw the gospel at people in a way that is judgmental or condemning, especially those who are far from God. We have to be careful because that could backfire. You don't want to go buy a $3,000 couch for your cat to lay on. You'll have nail marks all over that thing so fast, it won't even be funny. Right? Because they don't understand its value. You go get them like a little scratching pole from Walmart for $10.50. Like, this is what Jesus is saying. The gospel is something of great value. Share it, absolutely, but develop a relationship so that whenever you have the opportunity to actually share the gospel, they're actually ready to receive it. If you're just trying to change someone who's far from God because you see the road that they're going down is not good, don't. Love them for who they are. Jesus does. Are they broken? Yes. Are they far from Him? Yes. And He loves them and wants them to come near. And yelling at someone or trying to throw the gospel down their throat is not going to help them. Loving them and walking alongside of them is going to help them. With a lot of grace, with a lot of compassion, that's going to help them. And hopefully maybe that opens up a door where you then can say, hey, you want to fix these things now? Let me help you. When they come to realization of oh man, I really want to fix this thing that's in my eye, then you can help them. But until they get to that point, you're just throwing something very valuable to somebody who just has no interest. And you seem very unloving, you seem very ungracious, and you seem very condemning, which is not the way of Jesus. Now, if you see a brother or a sister in that way, I think you have, as long as you have done the work of letting people help you deal with your stuff, I think you have the bandwidth and the ability to speak into that brother or sister's life in a way to help them. So I think it's what Jesus is talking about here. Now, the coolest thing about all of this is that when we begin to live like this, when we begin to live in a way that we are no longer condemning and judgmental of those that we see who are struggling with something, but deal with our own mess and then help them deal with theirs, we become more like Jesus. That Jesus, he did not, when he would encounter someone who was messed up or who was struggling or who was going through something, he did not offer them judgment, but he offered them love and grace and compassion. And that's what he does for you and me. And that's why we take communion. We take communion every week because it reminds us that we have a God who does not condemn, but who offers us grace in place of a condemnation that we deserve. How should you treat someone who has a speck in their eye? How should you treat someone who has a plank in their eye? How should you be treated as someone who has a plank in your eye? With probably a lot of disdain and a lot of disregard. And yet Jesus says, no. I have no disdain for you. I have no disregard for you. In fact, I love you. Let me help you. He humbles himself and he comes down heaven to earth. He humbles himself. He gets on the cross and he dies for our sins. And he says, may you not forget May you not forget. My body has been broken, my blood has been shed because I chose to come and not judge you. I chose to not come and condemn you. I chose to come to offer you life and life abundantly. So when we come to the table each week and we take this bread and we take this cup, it is a reminder. It is a reminder that Jesus, He had every right to judge us. If there was ever someone who had the right, it was Him. He had no plank to remove. No speck keeping Him from seeing clearly. And yet, instead of offering judgment, instead of offering condemnation, He offers grace. So, when we begin to live in this rhythm too, we begin to look more like Him. We begin to hold the value that He holds. We begin to be humbled by His grace. And we begin to see more clearly the issues of our own life that need fixing. Where we're still struggling and where we still need hope and healing and rest. And so today, my hope and my prayer is that as you take the cup and as you eat this bread, you will remember Jesus' sacrifice comes alongside of you to help you identify and deal with the plank that's in all of our faces. And what He helps us do as we identify is He helps us remove it if we will just trust Him. He'll just come alongside of us and He'll help remove it. He'll help take it out because He's a good Father who loves us, who wants to give us good things. He doesn't wish harm upon us, but He wishes good things upon us. So He comes to help us remove that. And so as you sit and as you take today, I ask you to just maybe ponder, God, what in my life do you want to reveal to me? What plank needs to be removed? What community do I need to be around to help me remove that plank? How can I trust you? How can I believe that you have something good for me and that you will help me get rid of this so that I in turn can help other people? This is where we need to go. This is where we need to be, and hopefully this time right here takes us there. Takes us to a place where we begin to deal with that. If you have the cup and the bread, take it out. Take the bread in your hands and break it and eat. And remember that Christ's body was broken for you. And then take the cup and remember that His blood is poured out for you. Cleanse you of your unrighteousness and make you whole and give you abundant life. Just spend a moment real quick just praying. Spending some time with Jesus, asking Him, maybe what are the things that I need to remove, that I need to take care of? Maybe thanking Him that His blood shed on the cross enables those things not to be your identity, but that those things can be no longer a part of your life by His grace.